Well, good afternoon, friends. Great to have you with us here on the 2023 WMAL Fisher House Radiothon. This is the Vince Coglianese Show. Coming up on the program today, Emily Jashinsky joins us at 3:30. We'll take another look at the federal government's attacks on her own citizens. And then Sean Davis is here at 4:30 today as the United States Congress expels a Republican congressman. Sean has got some reactions to that. I'm sure you do as well. If you do, you can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. As noted throughout the day and right here on this program, it is the Fisher House Radiothon. If you'd like to make a contribution to the Fisher House, and I'm asking, please do, support the men and women of the military and their families in their moment of need, some temporary housing for them as they undergo some of their most trying times at these hospitals, these veterans hospitals, military hospitals, or God forbid, housing the families of the fallen at Dover. They all need help, and you can help them at 888-294-8560, 888-294-8560, or go online to WMAL.com/FisherHouse. It's the easiest possible way to do it, actually. You just go there. And I told you yesterday, I'll tell you again, you could probably do that in under 30 seconds. Think of a number, 10, 20, 100, 1,000, 5,000, and just go right there to the website. You could donate in probably 30 seconds if you raise. WMAL.com/Fisher House. We've got a lot of great guests coming up today from the Fisher House. They're going to tell you all about their experience with these angels on earth, the people of the Fisher House and these great homes they've got, and give you a sense of how your support has really bolstered them through the years. It has been over 20 years now that WMAL has had this relationship, and as a result of the generosity of WMAL listeners like you, over $8 million has been raised, giving the Fisher House the ability to rapidly expand, in a huge way, the number of homes that they have available to provide a roof over the head and some warm meals to military families who need them. And the people who need them are people who are injured in war. You know this. People who maybe stepped on an IED, didn't see it coming. You definitely don't ever. In a place like Iraq or Afghanistan. Who've been hit by our enemies, who've been injured or killed, for that matter, in training accidents. All sorts of military service members. Also, people who have been injured or become sick domestically. There's military service members who maybe have gone through a motorcycle accident, and now they're going through the difficult recovery as a result of that. Their family members have a place to stay during that time. Or they're fighting cancer, and they need to be at a hospital, and their family needs to be nearby during some of the most difficult moments that they're ever going to face. And they want to do it together. They want to do it with love. And the Fisher House helps them do that. And these Fisher Houses are just steps away from these hospitals, giving the families very close access. And if it's not within walking distance, the Fisher House provides transportation, vehicles to get to and from their lodging in the hospital. Many of these hospitals are on military bases, as you well know, which means that the average civilian may have a little bit of a difficult time getting onto that base. And that's where the Fisher House plays a role. They'll help them get to and from their lodging. But they're just so good. And I can't, we've heard so many great stories, and I want to make sure that you hear some of them today. They really speak to me. All of these great guests, they really speak to me in terms of what they've been through and just how heroic all of these people are. The family members, the military service members, how much they serve us. You can hear it. And it's so nice to be able to serve them in even a small way like this by supporting the Fisher House. Again, the number is 888-294-8560 or WMAL.com/Fisher House. Additionally, I should give you the totals now because I know you may be tracking this as we do this over the course of 2 days. At the beginning of this program, it was the top of the 3 o'clock hours, the last time I was given an update on this number, so it may have grown since then. It very likely has. With every minute, it typically does. We are at $334,479. That's a great sum of money. That is amazing. And it's going to go a long way. It's going to buy a lot of nights for these families who need them. And so God bless you for it. I'm told that we're a little ahead of our pace from last year right now, which is great. I'd like to be way ahead of our pace from last year. And this is here at WMAL, we do this for 2 days. That's it, just 2 days each year. All we ask of you is a little bit of your patience and your time and your generosity on these 2 days I will say, speaking for myself, I'm so grateful to have this audience and to be able to work with you each day on the events that are in the news. And we get a lot of them, and I'm going to go through a bunch of them today, of course, too. Like craziness happening on Capitol Hill. They just ejected. Did you know you could be thrown out of Congress for lying? Did you know about this? Apparently, if you lie, you don't get to be in Congress anymore. Well, if that's the case, I've got a list. And it's amazing. The people who all voted to boot this guy out of Congress for being a liar include people like Adam Schiff and Eric Swalwell and Dan Goldman. Like, all these people. It's like, really? This is the standard now. If you're a liar, you need to be kicked out of Congress. We'll get to that. I'm telling you. But like I said, here on WMAL, what we do is we say, okay, 2 days a year, we're going to make sure that we give back to the Fisher House. We give back to the troops. We're going to take care of them. So that's what we do. And God bless you for doing it, because it is because of this audience's work that you're going to hear the report card I'm delivering to you today. What has your generosity done? Well, I'm telling you. And if you'd like to keep it going, again, 888-294-8560, 888-294-8560, or WMAL.com/Fisher House. Here to give you a better sense of what's going on at the Fisher House is the Vice President of Communications. She's a retired Army officer, served in Iraq, Afghanistan, Germany, Kosovo. She's done it all. Michelle Horn joins us on the phone. Hello, Michelle.
So much for having me.
Oh, my goodness. Well, thank you for being here, and thank you for your service, Michelle. Tell us, how are things at the Fisher House these days?
Well, today we are thrilled with how much your listeners are giving today. It's just been, and I mean, it's just going to make a huge impact. We have 96 Fisher Houses that operate around the world, mostly in the country, but also in Germany and where our troops are stationed overseas. And we're going to be able to keep building thanks to the support from your listeners. It's great. The need isn't going to stop. And thanks to, everybody getting involved today, it's just friends. So I'm thrilled.
Michelle, how much does it take, for instance, to house a family for a night at a Fisher House on average?
It only takes $10 a night. The military actually does, and we take care of those costs. So no military family, no veteran family is pay themselves. We cover it all, and it's $10 a night. So just one $10 donation takes care of $100 takes care of 10 nights.
Yes.
So it's, every little bit does make a huge impact.
Yeah. Yeah. And my joy has been to read. We've had a couple of $1,000, $2,000. Yesterday, we had one $5,000 contribution during my program. And you sit here and you start doing the math. You're like, $1,000. That's based on that math. That's 100 nights now covered for families who need to use the Fisher House. And let me emphasize, need to. I mean, they want to be near their family. And it's because of the generosity of people like our listeners that they can be, and they can have all of that taken care of, Michelle.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm very fortunate because in communications, I get to go around and meet the different families staying at Fisher Houses. And you wouldn't believe that, having a place to stay and having family with you makes a difference between choosing to get treatment or not in some cases. So people actually choose that they're going to get treatment just because their family's there, and their families wouldn't be there if it wasn't for Fisher House.
And I believe that. And the reason for that, for many families, is expenses, what it costs to be able to do this. And they have to make these massive decisions about what the rest of their life is going to look like. And if you've got to go to a faraway hospital and your family has to go to a faraway hotel and they have to stay there for God knows how long, you're looking at immense expenses that you weren't ready for all of a sudden hitting you. And that can really add a lot more chaos to a life that's already become chaotic, clearly.
Well, yeah. And, military families, life is always chaotic, right? They're always in the middle of moves. I'm a veteran myself, and I've done plenty of those moves and trying to move your kids and everything else. I met a family last year, the Daniels family, who, as they were moving from Florida to their new duty station outside of Las Vegas, the mom went into early labor, and they stopped at the first military base that was closest to them in San Antonio, and they ended up there for months while their baby, who was born at just 23 weeks, they were able to stay at that hospital be with their baby until he was well enough to go home with them. But they were totally in transition. They had no furniture. They had none of their things. It was just a family of 4, then 5, all staying together in a fish, not even knowing where they would. And security is something that Fisher Houses really can provide that makes a big difference in families' lives.
A huge difference. Michelle, in your experience, are people still surprised that the Fisher House exists when they need it? It's, my sense is, at least in our area, I think more and more people are aware of it, certainly because I think of WMAL and the Radiothon, and we get people to support the Fisher House, which is wonderful. But my sense is that a lot of people, especially a lot of young troops and their families, they're not aware of it. And then all of a sudden they're in this moment of crisis. And the Fisher House must come along as something of a relief, as a surprise.
Yes, luckily a lot of healthcare workers are aware, and they're the ones who refer families when they're in that moment of uncertainty, and they're able to, refer them to the Fisher House. You don't know what resources you will need when you're in that critical moment. So getting out there about it, sharing the work, letting folks know they have their veterans, their military, or going through something, they can refer them. That's a big part of what we're doing here today too.
That's great.
So it's really important to keep sharing the word about Fisher House so that in moments of crisis, there's a little can come along and let people focus on what's really important. That's being together while they heal.
Definitely. So let me see if I can get this right. Is it 96 houses right now?
96 houses, yes. And we've got 3 under construction, so that'll bring us to 100 will go into construction early next year. So we're really excited about that. Over the last 20 years, we've saved families together, thanks to help from your listeners and other donors, more than $570 million for these wonderful families that have given so much already.
Well, in the short time we've been talking, Michelle, the number from our listeners has ticked up now to $339,157. It seems what it seems is happening is, as we talk about it, more and more people are picking up their phones and making the call here, or going to the website, making the donation. It's a really simple thing to do online, WMAL.com/Fisher House, or you can call 888-294-8560. So Michelle, 100 Fisher Houses will be open next year. I almost hesitate to ask, because it's like, this is so amazing what you're already doing. But what are the ambitions beyond the 100? What happens after you get to 100?
We keep building. I mean, there are more than 30 houses on our needs list. So I think about it as I get a little older. Like I said, I'm a retired Army soldier. As I get older, I have more and more things that start bugging me. I think we can all relate to that. And that's the same kind of thing, that veterans will continue to need care. Jessica Lynch, who you may have heard of her, she was the first POW during the initial invasion in Iraq. She and I had a conversation recently, and she is still receiving medical care twice a week for the injuries she sustained back then. I mean, veterans are going to keep needing care, whether it's from illnesses or their past injuries. It doesn't stop as you get older. And so the Fisher Houses will be there for them for their whole lives. And then for their children's lives as they get, as they enter service and become military members. Like my son, who is turning 18 in a year or so, and he's talking about entering the military. I'm thrilled that he'll be able to have Fisher House there for his whole life too.
And you talk about the veterans. Something that always sticks out to me is that the Fisher Houses are by these VA medical centers all over the planet, all over the country, and it's our Vietnam veterans in particular who didn't get the thank you that they deserved, the welcome home that they deserve. The Fisher House plays a big role in actually welcoming them home and giving them a place to stay and giving their families a place to stay when they get treated.
Absolutely. We're so grateful all that Vietnam veterans have done to really pave the way for those of us who are conflict veterans. And Fisher House is there for them and more veterans for Gulf War.
Yes.
We're there for veterans of all eras. That is not going to We will continue to be there as we grow and continue to provide services in every corner.
Well, Michelle Horn, again, Vice President of Communications over at the Fisher House, thank you for all that you do and all of your great colleagues. God bless you for it, and we're so proud to be linked up with you each year for the Fisher House Radiothon here on WMAL. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you so much.
And Mr. Tybee and Mr. Schellenberg, do you believe that this censorship is a form of election interference?
Absolutely it is. There's no question in my mind.
Mr. Tybee?
Yes, I think it certainly can be. In the latest story that we did on the CTI League, we saw the overt partisanship of the people involved in this operation. That was actually the reason the whistleblower came forward.
A long way of Matt Taibbi saying, yes, that's election interference. That was Matt Taibbi and Michael Schellenberger in testimony before Congress yesterday. You might know them as the journalists who were handling the Twitter files, Elon Musk handing over access to some journalists to take a look under the hood at all the ways that the federal government was spurring on the censorship of the American public at the big tech companies. It's out of control. And it is election rigging. If you can control the flow of information inside of a constitutional republic, you can control the outcomes of elections. Duh. This is the most obvious thing in the world, which is why the left has been after it, and they've had some success in this arena, and now has, of course, been exposed so many ways, including by those two great journalists. So they were testifying yesterday about all of this. And in the process, of course, what do Democrats do on this? Do they say, oh, my goodness, I can't believe what the government is doing to the American people. This needs to stop. That's what you would do if you were actually, quote, liberal. But that's not what they do. Dan Goldman yesterday, Congressman Levi Strauss, yesterday he was spreading conspiracy theories that Hunter Biden's laptop was a Russian plant, that it was a fraudulent thing. Even at this very late date, he's holding on to that claim. Emily Jashinsky is going to join us from the Federalist here in just a couple of minutes. We'll go through some of this audio and get her reaction to it. We have conspiracy theorists in Congress. People are just making things up, in order to rig elections. That guy has not been kicked out of Congress, by the way, not expelled as of yet. We'll give you any updates if that happens. Don't expect an update on that anytime soon. By the way, the Fisher House Radiothon, God bless you. We are at $341,178 raised just since yesterday morning right here on WMAL. Stay with us. You can contribute at 888-294-8560 or WMAL.com/FisherHouse. Well, good afternoon to you. It is 3:36 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. And we continue our great relationship with the Fisher House, and the 2023 WMAL Fisher House Radiothon. Call 888-294-8560 to help out the Fisher House and our troops, or go to WMAL.com/FisherHouse. Join the movement. And you can join us on the air today at 888-630-9625. I've got, coming up on the program, Sean Davis will be here at 4:30. And he's got some thoughts on George Santos being given the boot from the United States Congress. The voters on Long Island picked George Santos, whatever you think of him. Congress decided no, and they kicked him out today. It's probably a good use of their time, right? It's not like they have more important things to do. Let me focus on something else that was happening in Congress yesterday. This is worthwhile. It was a congressional hearing digging into the government's government-induced censorship of the American people. And Congressman Dan Goldman, Democrat, Levi Strauss heir, conspiracy theorist, was questioning the journalist Michael Schellenberger yesterday and said, that Hunter Biden laptop, we're not even sure if it's real, said Dan Goldman.
You've talked about the Hunter Biden laptop and how the FBI knew it existed. You are aware, of course, that the laptop, so to speak, that was published in the New York Post was actually a hard drive that the New York Post admitted here was not authenticated as real. It was not the laptop the FBI had. You're aware of that, right?
It was the same contents.
How do you know?
Because
the emails, by the way, have definitely been forensically authenticated. No question at all.
This is the same.
You would have to authenticate it to know it was the same contents. You have no idea. You know hard drives can be manipulated.
Are you suggesting the New York Post could participate in a conspiracy to construct the contents of the Hunter Biden laptop?
No, sir. The problem is that hard drives can be manipulated by Rudy Giuliani or Russia.
Well, what's the evidence of that?
Not even Hunter Biden is making this claim.
It happened.
Well, there is actual evidence of it, but the point is it's
There's
not
no
the same
evidence for it, so you're engaging in a conspiracy.
I'm glad
theory.
you
Let's bring in Emily Jashinsky now, one of our favorites, the culture editor over at The Federalist and the co-host of Counterpoints. Emily, good to have you back with us.
Hey, Vince, how's it going?
Good. Dan Goldman's always smug, but he's clearly wrong here.
Oh, my gosh. So clearly wrong here. I actually really liked, Vince, your minute-by-minute fact-checking of that exchange, because a lot of people might remember Dan Goldman during the frenzied Trump-Russia collusion investigation as an NBC, MSNBC legal analyst. He's a former prosecutor, and you could tell he felt really good about his position there. Schellenberger just wiped the floor with him. He's still a laptop truther. We are in the year of our Lord 2023, and Dan Goldman, Congressman Dan Goldman, is a laptop truther, and he's proud of it, as was evidenced by that exchange. It's not just that he's still a laptop truther, it's that he thinks this is the righteous, intelligence, enlightened position. And I really hope his voters judge him accordingly, although I'm assuming they won't.
Well, it goes to show you, and Goldman is kind of vocalizing, unfortunately, the way a lot of Democrats behave here, which is that they don't actually believe it. They're just trying to throw enough dirt into the ear that the voters are confused and walk away. And that's what this is. So the idea that these guys are engaged in good faith efforts to, quote, lead our country is belied by behavior like that, isn't it?
Oh, my gosh, absolutely. And you're right. I mean, they're trying to muddy the waters and create doubt because, to your point, as you were fact-checking, not even Hunter Biden is still making the claim about that story. And I would be willing to bet when the New York Post story dropped and intel circles were, immediately colluding, people in the government. You have Sean Davis coming up. He actually was one of the people who reported at the Federalist that there were people using their CIA email accounts to circulate that letter claiming the laptop was disinformation, even though they knew it wasn't. I would bet Dan Goldman had some inkling, whether through the sort of circles that he travels in or just because it was common sense at the time, that the laptop was not disinformation. No, he knew that. They have always, this has been their strategy with the laptop, literally from the moment it hit the pages of the New York Post, muddy the waters, put doubt in the public's mind. It is such a condescending position towards voters.
It is completely ahistoric, too, because Hunter Biden just sued the laptop repair guy. He just sued him for violating his privacy. So what is anybody even talking about? Dan Goldman's like, we don't even know where that laptop came from. Well, Hunter sure suspects it was the laptop repair guy.
Yeah, and I mean, it's amazing that every time Taibbi and Schellenberger come before the committee, they are just treated like this by Democrats who used to be the party that, championed the Pentagon Papers, championed all of those different, Daniel Ellsberg, Seymour Hersh. The Democrats were the ones that were happy to talk about their reporting. And now what they're doing is smearing and undermining left of center journalists. By the way, Schellenberger and Taibbi, two people who aren't exactly conservative stalwarts, but actually are people of the left, and Democrats are smearing them and smearing their work. Of all the crazy topsy-turvy things that have happened in this political era, these really stand out for them to spend the Trump years talking about the sanctity of the First Amendment and the free press in this country, and then watch the way they treat people who actually are doing great shoe leather journalism.
Yes, absolutely. There's another piece too here, and I don't have the audio to play for you, but I want to reflect upon it. Dan Goldman yesterday was arguing that the federal government getting involved, telling social media companies, hey, you should censor this. And then the social media companies censored like 30% of what the feds asked for. That was something like that. And then, and then Dan Goldman goes, see, they're not censoring you. That's not trampling the First Amendment. The social media companies only did it 30% of the time. And I'm sitting here going, are you serious? So if I cut off 30% of every sentence you uttered, I'm not censoring you? Is that what you're saying?
It's incredible. Matt Taibbi actually just published a new article on his Substack about this where he makes the point. He's like, okay, so you're going to tell the cops that you only stole 35% of a car? Imagine trying to get away with that and being like, I am innocent. I only stole 35% of the car. That's exactly the argument Dan Goldman was making. And it's funny because he's actually, as is obvious to anybody who listened to that, he's conceding that the government was engaged in censorship, just partial censorship, of course, but censorship nonetheless. So, of course, he's perfectly happy to see the censorship. And the censorship, by the way, it shouldn't be, taken for granted. Like, this stuff is, they were censoring reasonable positions, not just fringe crazy positions, which I would argue shouldn't even be censored, but they were censoring normal things, or they were colluding to censor fairly normal things that are just critical of the political establishment.
Well, I just think, you look at, you've covered this in depth, but it is amazing how much we've learned about what our power centers are doing with the control of information. When you're removing, literally YouTube deleting video interviews with Robert F. Kennedy Jr., just interviews. He sits down and talks to somebody, and he gives them his ideas and what he thinks is going on. Google's been deleting them. I just talked to Brent Bozell about this yesterday. They keep a great list of all the things over at MRC that the big tech companies have been doing. And oftentimes it's the federal government or DHS or CISA, which is an agency within DHS. They're making these requests to have information censored on the internet, and even during the pandemic, urging Americans to report their friends and family to the big tech companies to have them censored. We have an out-of-control, fascistic, unfortunately, government when it comes to information.
And I think the other important part of that is they're proud of it. Again, like Dan Goldman, you saw them trying to operate a little cleverly and sort of in the shadows when you go back and look at the emails that Taibbi and Schellenberger and others are reporting on. They obviously understood the need for some privacy, secrecy, confidentiality, but now that the stuff comes out, they're not like, oh, no, we shouldn't be doing this. They're like, we are doing this to protect the public from itself. They're proud that they are part of it.
Yeah, and that's always the way they sneak it past you. I mean, history has always demonstrated this, that they will raise safety as the explanation for why they're robbing you of your liberty. So stop falling for it. I guess that's the lesson here. Emily Jashinsky, thank you very much, as always, and please check out her excellent show, Counterpoints. She's the best. Emily, thank you.
Appreciate it, Vince.
Good to talk to you. The WMAL Fisher House Radiothon continues here. You can contribute to the Fisher House and help our troops. So while we tell you the stories of the way people are being bad and misusing their power, well, the power that we all have is to do some good. We should. You can call 888-294-8560. Contribute to the Fisher House and the troops. WMAL.com/Fisher House is where you can do that online. And joining us right now is Don Van Borsch, who stayed at the Charleston Fisher House with his wife, Jan. They stayed there for 6 months while waiting to receive a heart transplant. Don, good to have you with us. Thank you.
Yes.
So tell us about when you first came into contact with the Fisher House, Don.
Well, we were going down to Charleston all the time for right heart casts and everything. And then I finally got admitted in the hospital. And we were basically going to be staying at a hotel.
Yeah.
And then the social worker there at MUSC knew I was a veteran and hooked us up at the Fisher House.
Wow. So 6 months. This was a waiting period for you, just trying to wait until you could get a heart for this transplant.
I waited 13 weeks for the transplant. And then another month in the hospital in rehab, and then another month I stayed at the Fisher House myself. But my wife stayed down there the whole 6 months.
Wow.
And they were fantastic with her.
How close is the Fisher House to the hospital?
Oh, maybe 10 minutes.
That's great. So your wife was right nearby the whole time?
Right here the whole time. If she couldn't have stayed at the Fisher House, I've been by myself for the whole time. Because we figured it would cost about $20,000 to stay down there.
I was just about to ask.
At the minimum.
I was just about to ask. You must have at some point done the math, how much it would have cost you. So the Fisher House was pivotal in terms of being there for you and your wife.
Oh, yes. Very pivotal. I mean, they treated her like gold. I mean, there's always food there for her. People came in to give food. Brought food in for the residents and everything. I mean, it was fantastic. And
I can't imagine going through what you went through, Don, to get a heart transplant. I I know that if I was going through it, the one person I'd want to be really close to me is my wife. How much of a difference did it make to have her there with you?
Oh, totally. I mean, I couldn't have handled it, I don't think.
Yeah, that's a tough one. So how are you doing now, Don?
I'm doing fantastic. I mean, I feel great. I mean, I'm doing pretty much anything I want to do. I got to get my strength back in that, but otherwise, I feel fantastic.
That's good news. And now that you feel fantastic, I got to say, the people we talk to, the reason they're here, people like Don, is because they want to spend some time telling other people about the Fisher House. So you're spending time now because this is how much you sincerely believe in this program, sir.
Oh, yes. I totally believe in the Fisher House. I mean, we came down. I have to go down there for a right heart cath periodically, and then on Mondays and a Sunday I came down, and we cooked for the house. That's how much it means to us.
In the big kitchen, there's a kitchen. So people understand here, Don. There's typically the way these Fisher houses are built. There are a variety of rooms, suites, private room and a bathroom. But there's a common hall, a common area, a place to sit down and eat, and a big kitchen where somebody like yourself could get together and make food for everybody.
Pretty much, yes. It's basically two kitchens almost, complete setups. I mean, they have everything you need to cook with, pots, pans. You just have to bring the food in, and sometimes they even have the food there for you to cook.
Do you find that the people you meet there are grateful to find a friend inside that home?
Oh, yes. My wife's made lifelong friends, and so have I.
Amazing. Well, I got to say, we're very grateful for your time, Don Van Borsch, and very grateful to hear that you're doing well, sir. God bless you and your wife, and thank you so much for your time today supporting the Fisher House.
It was my pleasure.
Of course. Nice. What a nice man. Thank you for calling in. That's Don Van Borsch. Again, stayed at that Charleston Fisher House, got a heart transplant, and his darling wife was able to stay with him for all those 6 months right there near the hospital and be with him, which is, that's the key. That's the key. You want somebody close during scary time to have a heart transplant. Can't imagine. Let me extend some gratitude here while I have a chance to Joseph in Greenbelt, who apparently in the last few minutes has just made a $1,000 contribution. $1,000 to the Fisher House. What a generous contribution. Joseph, thank you for that. If you'd like to be like Joseph, the number is 888-294-8560, 888-294-8560, or online at WMAL.com/FisherHouse. We've got a lot of great news to get to. Gavin Newsom and Ron DeSantis had that big debate last night on the Fox News channel. It was so funny. Greasy Gavin Newsom. Apparently, they were supposed to. Fox News had allotted 2 hours for this thing, an hour and a half for the debate, and then an extra half hour of post-debate analysis. Sean Hannity was going to host all of it. And at the hour and a half mark, just before the break, Hannity says, hey, if you guys want to keep going, we can keep going. And they both kind of silently assented. Yeah, okay, we keep going. He's like, all right, fine. After this commercial, we'll be back and we'll keep going. Well, when they came back, it was a one shot. It was just Hannity by himself. And he's like, well, it turns out both campaigns, they had to go. They had other obligations. So we weren't able to keep going. So sorry, but we're done. What did you think? That kind of thing. And what we found out today from Politico, which is kind of hilarious, is that apparently Gavin Newsom's cute wife threw in the towel. She didn't throw a literal towel. I'm not sure she can throw. But she went up there and she said, we're done. She took him off the stage. Now, why would you do that? Why would, if you were Madam Newsom, why would you go up there and intercept your husband? If he's doing great, let the man shine, right? This is his big moment. He's on national television. He's beating Ron DeSantis into a pulp. That's not what she did. And that kind of gives you some sense of how it went. It did not go well for Newsom last night. There was some expectation that, he's got a good smile. He can navigate through all of this. He'll just laugh and then lie and then make his way through. And he did do a lot of that, but he just didn't do well, quite honestly. It's so funny. There was a great moment. Ron DeSantis brings up that Gavin Newsom's father-in-law hated California so much that he moved to, you guessed it,
So I was talking to a fella who had made the move from California to Florida, and he was telling me that Florida is much better governed, safer, better budget, lower taxes, all this stuff. And he was really happy with the quality of life. And then he paused and he said, by the way, I'm Gavin Newsom's father-in-law. So we do count Gavin's in-laws as some of the people that have fled California and come to the state of Florida.
DeSantis did have some great moments. That was a great one. Also, when he held up the poop map from San Francisco, it was like there's an app you can use to figure out where all the human excrement is all over a city that was once one of the crown jewels of the United States. Not anymore. Not after old greasy Gavin Newsom turned it into an actual toilet. Yeah, that was interesting. We'll try and get to some more of that coming up, how that went, the fallout from that big debate. Also, the Fisher House Radiothon continues. Your contributions at this very moment have led to $345,230 going to the men and women of the military and their wonderful families. You can do more at WMAL.com/Fisher House. We're almost at the end here of this WMAL Radiothon. Can you help us out?